thunder and lightning, past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. She opened the earth, rocking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws, prisons, and courts. Screaming white-hot flames and agony, she challenged millions of headhunters, dragging and ripping apart impossible tender moments of time, shipping vessels of history, ancient history, destroying the fabric, the godlike claw of destiny of a people with a gun, a knife, a cannon, building the hideous wall of blood called slavery.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome back. And yesterday, President Trump continued to push his idea of a U.S. takeover of Gaza, claiming Israel would hand over the territory to the United States at the, quote, conclusion of fighting, end quote, and insisting the occupation wouldn't require U.S. troops. Really? It's an incredibly interesting assessment. Can this happen? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they take place in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is Trump declaring, quote, the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting, end quote. His comments suggest that he expects Israel's genocidal war to restart, as though it's even ended, which would be supported with U.S. military aid. Let's get some insight from our guest. He's a political analyst and award-winning broadcaster and journalist based in Beirut, Lebanon, and the creator of FreePalestine.video. Laith Marouf, my brother, as always, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Wilmer.
Let me just throw this. What are you and your colleagues covering right now at FreePalestine.video?
We are covering all the released Palestinian prisoners in the West Bank. We have been doing interviews with every Palestinian prisoner that we can reach, the ones that were not exiled outside the West Bank. And we have been able to interview the most number of any television station in Arabic or in English in the world of those, so people can go and watch those interviews. We're also doing coverage in Lebanon here from the front and producing interviews with personalities that are either in Lebanon or visiting Lebanon. Again, the videos, the website has links to all our socials, FreePalestine.video, and people can donate there for us to be able to cover the costs of this production.
And I strongly, strongly recommend that they do, because the work that you are doing is invaluable. And one of the things that strikes me are the interviews that you're doing, but I'm not, at least in terms of Western media, I'm not hearing from nor seeing from the released Israeli captives. I remember when this thing first started, as it relates to October 7th, and they released that. Well, the narrative was that all of these Israelis were being brutalized and they were being raped and all this other kinds of things. And there was an older woman that was released, and she said, "Oh no, they treated me quite well. We talked religion, and they were telling us that because of Islam that we had to be treated in a certain manner." And so one would expect, if the narrative were true, that there would be all of these horrific stories of brutalization and mayhem, but we're hearing nothing.
Yeah, so we definitely saw, obviously, all of us, the images of these Israeli prisoners of war being released and how they looked healthy, well-fed, and well-groomed. On the other hand, we saw the images of the Palestinian prisoners coming out being tortured, malnutritioned, and suffering from medical neglect. And we've done interviews with all of these prisoners, and the stories that we hear are horrendous. And this also prompted the Red Cross, which usually never speaks about these issues, to break its silence and condemn the conditions of the Palestinian prisoners, and especially in the last few hours before they're released, the torture that they had to suffer and the mistreatment before they're being handed over back to their families. In comparison, of course, we all saw how well treated the Israeli prisoners were, including being given gifts for their goodbyes before being handed over to the Red Cross. So, and there's all the evidence also from interviews with the Israeli prisoners that came out lately. None of them mentioned anything about mistreatment. In fact, they talked about how they lived in the same conditions that their captors lived in, that they ate the same food as the the guards around them, and that the biggest fear they had was when Israeli bombs were getting close to the location that they were held in. And I would say one last thing here is that some of the Zionist propagandists were trying to claim that this is what they call, what is it, the Stockholm Syndrome. And of course, there is no such thing as Stockholm Syndrome. And if it did exist for real, we would have heard at least one Palestinian prisoner identifying with his captures. But of course, the only time we hear about Stockholm Syndrome is when it's white people saying that they were not mistreated by a brown person.
Electronic Intifada has a piece entitled "As One War Ends, Another Begins," and it reads as follows: Israel's overt assault on Gaza has ended, at least for now. The sounds of planes and whistles of shells have stopped, as have the moments of sheer terror and hiding from Israel's attacks. But the ceasefire has left behind a new life, no less harsh than the war itself, a struggle to search for a life worth living amid the rubble of homes, disfigured streets, and dreams buried beneath the debris. It is a war of patience and perseverance in the absence of any clear reconstruction plans. There are no quick solutions, only people fighting to survive and refusing to surrender to ruin. Your thoughts, Laith Marouf?
Yeah, I mean, the second stage of this ceasefire was supposed to start right now, and it should have included the delivery of hundreds of thousands of tents and tens of thousands of mobile homes. And the Israelis are refusing the entry of this material. So most of the people in Gaza are right now sleeping in the open. Here in Beirut, we're suffering the same weather as in Gaza. There's a winter storm for the last 2 days, and it's going to continue over for the weekend. We're seeing snow and hail here in Beirut. So the temperatures are dropping to almost freezing point. So the conditions are horrible. And what Trump and the Netanyahu are trying to do right now is make the life of the Palestinian people who won this war against the Zionist hordes at a huge cost and did not bend down on the knee for the Jewish supremacist hordes that the West is throwing on us. They're trying to now make the Palestinian people suffer for that. And of course, I don't think the Palestinian people have given up after 100 years, and a little bit more, sadomasochism from the fascist is not going to make us give up either.
You just mentioned the winner of the war. We talk about this just about every time we speak, but I think it's very important to reiterate. So, because it's very easy when, particularly here in the West, when you see these this video of just this utter devastation, and you see these people that are just destitute, it is very easy to fall into the mindset of winners and losers. But it's always important for people to understand that the calculus between the two sides is very different. So if you could explain why you say Hamas won.
Well, the clear objectives of the Zionists have, kind of been laid out in the bare to the world with Trump. The objective was to clear the Palestinians from Gaza, and the Palestinians were not cleared. They neither killed them all and or expelled them yet, because this is a game of colonialism. The Zionist colony, in the last 10 years, for the first time since 1948, the Palestinian population outnumbered the colonists. And the trajectory in a situation where a colony doesn't become majority colonist is that it will revert back to the indigenous population. And so what the Israelis have in front of them as choices is either accept equality and live with the indigenous people, and or they have to get rid of the indigenous, either through mass genocide or mass expulsion. And they have not been able to achieve that. Yes, out of the numbers that finally are coming out from Trump now, when we hear 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza have to be expelled ethnically cleansed according to Trump, that means that at least half a million Palestinians were killed actually in this war. But on the other side, over the last 16 months, 600,000 Israeli colonists applied for immigration and a second citizenship around the world. This is above and beyond the other 2 million that already had a citizenship and left. So we're talking about 1/3 of the colonist population almost already left in the last 16 months. So no matter how much they killed and how much they destroyed in Gaza, they haven't been able to change the demographic in the territory between the river and the sea. And this is why Trump is trying to push for the expulsion of the remaining Palestinians in Gaza in order to make up for the 1 million to 2 million Israelis that already left.
Trump actually stood before a world audience and announced that he wants to clear 2 million Palestinian human beings from Palestinian land and give them what he calls, quote, a good, fresh, beautiful piece of land, adding, it would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return, end quote. Now, I think, and this has received tremendous pushback. A number of people have just been totally offended, just nauseated by his making this statement. But if the Associated Press reports are accurate, this can't be singularly attributed to Trump. Quote, a Western diplomat in Cairo, also speaking anonymously because the discussions have not been made public, said Egypt was very serious and viewed the plan as a threat to its national security. The diplomat said Egypt rejected similar proposals from the Biden administration and European countries early in the war. So this, if this is true, and I have no reason to doubt it, this goes back to two things. One, it's not Trump policy, it's American foreign policy. And the other point is, this is one of the reasons why the elite don't like him, because as despicable as the truth is, he tells the truth sometimes.
Yes. Look, we don't have to even refer to this report because we have memory that is longer than a goldfish. And we all remember openly Biden talking about Egypt taking Palestinian refugees from Gaza, and at the time the Egyptian military moving to the border to block that. And since then, Egypt moved in tens of thousands of armored vehicles and military equipment, heavy military equipment, to the border between occupied Palestine and Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula. So this is not Trump's plan, and it's not even Biden's plan. This is Netanyahu's plan. This is the Zionist plan. And both of these emperors are beholden by the Zionist establishment, headed now globally by Netanyahu. I mean, look at the pictures of, number one, the choices of ties, that Netanyahu wearing the red tie while Trump wearing the baby blue color tie that goes with the Israeli flag. You look at the body language of two men, one of them being the emperor, whether one of them being the head of this colony, the emperor pushing the chair under the Netanyahu, and they're not gay lovers. So you never see like men doing this to each other. Definitely not the more powerful one being the one pushing the chair. And so clearly, all of these elite in the West have things on them being held by the Epstein clan. The videos probably that we heard in the first presidency of Trump of golden showers were not Russian taped. They were Israeli Epstein taped. And so he read from a script. You saw this was actually one of the few times that we saw him reading from something instead of just shooting off the hip. He had a script in front of him that he was reading, and that shows you who's master, really.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was paying very close attention to Donald Trump when he was, I guess, trying to express condolences or speaking to the airplane crash between the American airliner and the military helicopter. And as he was trying to express grief, he read from a script. He couldn't even extol or emote sympathy just off the cuff. He couldn't look at the video and just speak to the horror that played out on our screen. He had to refer to a script, and he stayed on script. And because, to your point, rarely does he do that.
Add to it the fact that I know the Zionist media was using this as a joke, but the gift of the golden pager and a real pager with it, I mean, they were making it as if it's a funny thing and the glory of the Mossad. Well, this was a death threat to Trump, giving him a real pager above and beyond that. It's clear that he was being told what to do. I am at this point, I tell you something, brother Wilmer. Our Jewish brothers and sisters in the United States and in the West and Canada and so on that call themselves anti-Zionist, they have a duty right now, because the emperor of the United States, they are citizens of, and the other emperor, mini emperor Netanyahu, that speaks in their name as Jews, they have a duty right now to go to the fields of Gaza, to stand in the way of the war machine, of those who are killing in their name and in the name of their religion, and the crimes that are being committed by the empire that they belong to. All of this, all of the Palestinians that are being killed in their name. And up until now, I feel shame for our Jewish brothers and sisters. Up until now, not one Jew around the world hid a Palestinian like Germans hid Jews from the Nazis. Not one Jewish person carried arms against the Zionists to defend the Palestinians, unlike the 70,000 Germans that carried arms against the Nazis. We're now at this moment being told openly that there will be a genocide and an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians conducted in the name of the Jewish people. If none of them move to put themselves in the path of this genocidal machine, if none of them come to hide the Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, there's nothing to save of Judaism. This is the fate that they will be writing for Judaism. Not Netanyahu is the one that's destroying the fate of Judaism as a religion and its respect. It is their silence and inaction. Silence, I know they've been talking a lot. Their inaction is actually what's going to condemn. The inaction of those who call themselves anti-Zionist Jews is what will condemn Judaism for perpetuity.
If I understand your point, and let me rephrase, Zionism has co-opted Judaism, and it is now up to the real Jewish people to stand up and defend what the Zionists have co-opted. If they fail to do so, then the plight of the demise of their religion is on their hands.
Exactly. You know, there's so many Muslims that stand against the Wahhabi cult, that is a CIA affiliated just like the Zionists. But we don't, Muslims carried arms. There was white people during slavery, including John Brown and others, that carried arms and were martyred to stop slavery. There was, as we know, Germans that did the same. This is unprecedented, I think, and not in modern history at least, that a nation, a whole nation that calls itself a nation, a whole people, just stand still as crimes are being committed in their name. I would love to celebrate a guy like Schindler's List, but that's hiding Palestinians, that's Jewish. Mm-hmm. But we don't have one.
Let me ask a stupid question. So are the lines of demarcation in historic Palestine really that clear? So again, if I may rephrase, and you made reference to John Brown, are there no? We look at we celebrate Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, for example, during the three civil rights leaders, activists that were murdered in Mississippi. Goodman and Schwerner, both being Jewish Americans. Cheney, of course, being an African American. So what you're saying is, in historic Palestine, you don't have Jews on the front line that are backing the Palestinian plight.
The only Jews that ever carried arms are the true Jews, the true original Jews, the Samaritans. Okay, what we call Samaritans from Nablus, my hometown, original hometown of my mother. Nablus has the original Jews that are called Samaritans, and they refuse to take Israeli citizenship. And some of them, as Palestinian Jews, carried arms. But now those are not what we're talking about. We're talking about European Jews, descendants of converts that are claiming that they speak in the name of Judaism, although as you see, they have no relation to the original Jews. And all this is being committed in their name. Let's see one. We've seen actual white Christian and white secular activists die and be killed and be martyred for Palestine, like Richard Corey, like Thomas Handel. We even saw a Christian white guy immolate himself in the United States in front of the Israeli embassy. Bushnell, former soldier Bushnell. Do we have a Jewish equivalent to that, to any of those? And that's, for me, it's a sad day, a sad day. We have a lot of people within the Jewish, European, Jewish American activist scene that talk and talk and talk, and maybe go and disrupt a public space. But we've never seen them go and take over, challenge, disrupt the Zionist organizations or the Zionist synagogues, or take down those hateful preachers that speak in the name of Judaism off the pulpit, if they don't want to go down to the fields of Gaza to defend the Palestinians, if they don't want to go to the West Bank to defend the Palestinians, if they don't want to go to Egypt and break the siege and bring the aid to Gaza, those are things that are all their responsibility, their duty, before anybody else's. But unfortunately, we see more non-Jewish white people that have more dignity and hope and fight for the lives and of the Palestinians than our Jewish brothers and sisters.
I've talked to you for a number of years, for a very long time, over a number of years. I get a sense from you right now that I have never gotten from you before. I don't know if it's, well, it's obviously pain. It's very clearly pain. But I'm not sure if it's anger, frustration, but the guy I'm talking to right now, I'm getting something from him that I've never gotten before.
Yes, for 20 somewhat years being revolutionary on this field and doing all this media work, and it was always important for me and for educating others to differentiate between Judaism and Zionism. I had to study everything that I can about the history of the Jewish religion and the Jewish people in every place on this earth, in order to be equipped to discuss these things and to also assert my humanity. When talking as a Palestinian to audiences in the West, you always have to somehow reassert over and over that you know about Jewish people and their history as a credential to even a gate to open the door to your humanity.
In fact, let me just interject and say, because you are anticipating the pushback, you're anticipating how your analysis is going to be assessed and qualified, and so you are compelled to try to diffuse it before it is even said.
Yes. So, after 20 somewhat years and finding out that actually I'm doing more work to humanize Jewish people than I've ever seen anybody in the Jewish community do to humanize me as a Palestinian. And after watching a genocide, it was always an ongoing genocide, but it was incremental before. But right now we were saturated for 16 months. I expected personally, to tell you the truth, that maybe in the first 6 months, some Jewish radical that calls themselves anarchist or communist or whatever it is would carry some arms and go on the battlefield, or attack some Zionist establishment somewhere, because the Palestinian people are being killed in their name. I expected something to awaken beyond this liberal demonstrations or media propaganda campaigns that could actually make a difference. But now we're 16 months after, and we're being told now there's going to be a second stage of the genocide. There's no more time to be polite with anybody. And in fact, the more inaction happens from the Jewish community, the more it's harder for me to defend the differentiation between Zionism and Judaism. Because the action that we see being conducted in the name of Judaism, led by a state that calls itself the Jewish state, with the emperor and all the Western governments making it that there is no differentiation between Zionism and Judaism in the acts that they just passed, this new anti-Semitism act in the US and the one that's in Canada and the one that's in England, all of them basically saying criticism of the Zionist ideology or the state colony is anti-Semitic. Therefore, they're telling us Zionism is Judaism. This is the law. It's not my word. It's the law. And there's no Jews fighting this law.
Going back to Trump's comments, are we allowing ourselves to be distracted by that foolishness? Well, that's the first question.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not that he doesn't want to implement that. He will try to implement that. That's what the Israelis have been trying to implement since 1948. They tried to convince the Jordanian, for instance, king in the 1950s to just annex the West Bank and make it part of Jordan. He refused. They tried to expel the Palestinians in Gaza in the 60s, and after the 67 war, they tried it in the 70s. And it doesn't matter like how many times they tried it, it didn't work. And in fact, like, look, if right now, actually Trump decides to send in military to occupy Gaza as a territory of the United States, because this is what we're being told, is that Israel is handing over the territory to the United States. It's going to be part of, Gazans are going to be subjects, direct subjects, and the territory there. Well, the Israelis used 200,000 soldiers in Gaza over 16 months, and they couldn't defeat the resistance or occupy the territory or force expel the population. Logically, I think somebody did this on the internet. Somebody entered all the relevant information about Gaza and previous battles and population and all of that into DeepSeek and asked what would require for the United States to occupy Gaza and be able to expel the Palestinian population. It will require 500,000 American soldiers. So this is not going to happen. And in fact, I personally wish, I'd hope that Trump's attempts to do this, it will lead to the fall of any government that goes with it, and or is forced to do it. Let's say Egypt is forced to take the Palestinians and is fighting, and it doesn't succeed to stop, the government will fall there. Similarly in Jordan, those are two states that protected Israel over the last 16 months when the axis of resistance was flying its missiles and drones from Yemen, Iran, and Lebanon, and the Jordanians and the Egyptians were the ones that were intercepting those missiles. Now they're going to be fighting Israel. I hope it does it. And, it'll be better. It's over anyways. Like, the Israelis are defeated. It's better to fight the big bully, the big Satan, the United States directly. Let's see if the American public then can, will stay quiet as American soldiers come back in coffins from the fields of Gaza.
Sisi in Egypt has said annexation of Palestine is a non-starter. Bin Salman in Saudi Arabia has said annexation of Palestine, non-starter, not going to happen. Can you trust how emphatic they are in their statements, or do you have concern that over time that they will acquiesce in some form or fashion? Or will the Egyptians see to it that Sisi doesn't do it? Will the Saudis see to it that Bin Salman doesn't do it, along with the others?
Look, any attempt to push Palestinians from the West Bank into Jordan will lead, and if the Jordanian military doesn't actually declare war and goes into full war with Israel, as they already said they will go, if one Palestinian refugee is pushed across the border to Jordan, they're going to declare war. That's what the Jordanians said. If they don't declare war, there'll be a revolution. It'll be the end of the Jordanian monarchy. And in Egypt, it's a similar situation. If one Palestinian crosses into Gaza, into Sinai, in the Sinai Peninsula, there will be a military coup, if not a revolution. The state legitimacy, both in Egypt and Jordan, hinges right now on their ability to stand in the way of the project to expel the Palestinian population.
Senator John Fetterman, you talked about the United States and its involvement. Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania says he fully supports deploying troops to Gaza. He's backing the deployment. He's backing Trump's plan. Quote, the Palestinians have refused, or they've been unwilling to deliver a government that provided security and economic development for themselves. He told this to the Jewish Insider. Quote, they allowed October 7th to occur, and now Gaza has to be rebuilt. Where are the people going to live? Well, I can answer that question. Why don't you send them to resettle them in Israel, since it's their land anyway? But anyway, where are they going to go? So it's a part of a conversation where they are right now. Well, again, to Fetterman's question about, well, where do you send them? Since that is their space, let them occupy their space. As those that as those that destroyed their space need to rebuild the space that they destroyed. Laith Marouf.
Look, we're right now in. They opened the door, Trump and Netanyahu, with this language. We live in a world where there's no more international law, whether it's the right now threats and sanctions on the International Criminal Court and judges and their families that Trump just did. It's the lawless move, and or these outright saying, I'm going to just take Gaza as part of the United States and I'm going to expel you. There's no more international law. It's just thuggery. We're living in the wild, wild west. And since we can talk in such language, now that it's acceptable to talk about full expulsion and transfer of populations, and since clearly the Western elite, including the Emperor Trump, love Jews so much. They love them more than their own states and their own populations and their own citizens, Christian and secular and what have you. Since they love them so much, take them all. It's easier to take the Israelis, all of them, and dump them in New York. Anyways, New York is the other Jewish state, okay? They're not gonna feel out of place. Or maybe dump them in Orlando, the older ones, okay? Since it's already like a Jewish retirement city. And the good-looking ones, dump them in LA, and it's just gonna help the already overwhelmingly Jewish business of Hollywood. So no, that's the better solution, and it will be right now the solution. They're pushing into a zero sum, and the United States is hinging right now its existence as an empire on the ethnic purity of Israel, or the land between the river and the sea. And I tell you, the ethnic purity is going to be Arab. And what they just brought upon the world with this opening this door is that another Holocaust now is acceptable, because there was a Holocaust in Gaza that was accepted. So a Holocaust of the Jews inside Palestine is also acceptable today. That's what we are, what kind of world we live in. And the gentle, non-brutal resistance that we saw from the axis of resistance over the last 16 months, where Hezbollah and Hamas and Ansarullah and Iran all purposefully didn't hit any residential homes, or always targeted military targets, while the enemy is mass killing in Gaza and totally destroying villages and so forth in Lebanon. Well, the next stage of the war, there will be deliberate targeting of Israeli civilians and civilian infrastructure, because that's normal now. That's the normal. It doesn't work anymore to have a gentleman's war and follow the rules of engagement dictated in international law that came after World War II, because that doesn't exist anymore. De facto, it doesn't exist.
Donald Trump made, amongst a bunch of odd statements, he made what to me was an odd statement, quote, "The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer, would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free." He posted this on one of his ridiculous chats, referring to Chuck Schumer as a Palestinian. And this is not the first time he's made that reference, but I don't get it. Explain. Do you understand that reference?
I don't understand this reference, except that he used before Palestinian as a
derogatory term.
Yes, but isn't it
pejorative?
Pejorative, that's the word. But isn't Chuck Schumer Jewish?
Very much so.
Okay, so let's replace the word Palestinian with Jew there.
And very much on the side and supported by AIPAC. That's why I don't get it.
It's crazy, hey? It's crazy. He's trying to kind of I don't know, man. The guy is definitely crazy.
Okay.
And sometimes he writes these things, but truly, if you replace the word Palestinian to Jew in that tweet, he'll understand how hateful it is.
But again, Trump has referred to Schumer as a Palestinian more than once, and it's to me it's analogous to the Lil Marco reference when he talked about Marco Rubio. He always had these names for his adversaries, and so but that one I couldn't figure out. But then again, when you try to understand insanity, it tends to make you insane. There was another interesting piece in antiwar.com. And this is kind of stating the obvious, but the fact that it's in print, I think is important to discuss. U.S. coordinated with Israel on strikes in Gaza, knowing hundreds of civilians would be killed. A report from 972 magazine details how Israel dropped massive bombs on areas where it believed a Hamas commander was located but wasn't sure. The U.S. coordinated closely with Israel on massive strikes in Gaza on residential buildings, knowing that more than 100 civilians would be killed, even though Israel didn't have precise intelligence about the location of a Hamas commander it was claiming to target. And I think with this, it is also important, connecting dots in other places, that in a lot of instances where you see these types of conflicts, the United States plays a key role, as it's doing in Ukraine. It plays a key role in targeting. It plays a key role in logistics. It plays a key role in intel. It tells its proxies where to go, when to fire, how to fire, what to do. The United States cannot sit back and claim clean hands, or we're trying to be an unbiased, independent arbiter here. Not when you're helping with targeting and logistics and providing the 1,000-pound bombs, Laith Marouf.
Yeah, it goes more than that even. You know, the Israeli military is a military of wimps, of perverts, of sexual deviants. Did you ever see even the Ukrainian soldiers going into Russian, homes and putting on women's underwear? Did you ever see that?
Haven't seen that video.
Have you ever seen any military in the world, even the Wahhabi death squads, that rape mass women? Did you ever see them put on women's underwear and film
Haven't
themselves?
seen that video.
So these pedophiles and sexual perverts are not able to kill anybody. They're wimps on the battlefield. They cry for their mama, and they have to have diapers on when they're sent out. The whole war was fought by the West on behalf of this diaper pervert pedophile nation and army. Okay, none of them. All this talk about karma is karma crap. Okay, it's all about creating this Hollywood new Jew that is strong, and this. You hear them how they talk about that and how they denigrate their own history, and the people that died in the Holocaust, to say that was the old Jew, the weak. We are now the new one. What kind of strong new Jew puts on ladies' underwear and films themselves, or crashes into a church in South Lebanon in the middle of the night and has a gay wedding, drunk and on drugs, and films himself and put it out on the internet? The Israeli military has lost long time ago and cannot fight anything. Every war crime that was committed in Gaza, in Lebanon, was committed directly by the United States, by the United Kingdom, by Canada, by Germany, by France, by Italy, and all their mercenary armies that fought on the battlefield, because these Israeli soldiers didn't fight nothing.
Laith, I want to thank you for your time. Again, I can. This one wasn't easy, and I just, man, all I can say is thank you.
Thank you. I know, Wilmer, it was. It's a little bit late tonight here, and the thing that actually triggered me, I tell you, it wasn't about our interview here, the questions. Earlier in the day, the new envoy for Trump, I think her name is Ortega or something, some plastic, Barbie Latina that has 100 plastic surgeries, is now replaced the Israeli-American Hochstein, that was the envoy of Biden. She arrived here in Lebanon, and she went to the presidential palace, stood by the new president, General Joseph Aoun, and from the pulpit there, thanked Israel for defeating Hezbollah and for killing their leadership, and waved her finger with a Star of David ring on it, saying that Hezbollah will not be allowed to have any members in the ministry cabinets, and then walked off to the airport. This is the kind of imperialist depravity now that we live in. And if there was one dignified journalist in that space, they should have thrown a shoe in her face. Okay. If there was a dignified soldier in that room, they should have done more, Lebanese soldiers. But this is where we at. We live in the wild, wild west right now, and it has to be outed in this way, because our enemy is trying to bully us and crush us, and we have to fight back in strong manner.
Again, my dear brother, thank you. Man, peace and blessings to you, to your family. We pray for you, man. And folks, you got to go and check out freepalestine.video. You've got to check out freepalestine.video. And you got to support freepalestine.video, because that's one of the few places you can go, especially if you speak English. That's one of the few places you can go and get the truth. My dear brother, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Wilmer.
Love you, man. Take care. Well, folks, there you have it. I got to thank my dear brother Laith Marouf for joining me today. Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Please stay tuned for new episodes every week. The feeling that, this is one of those where if you were to turn the sound off and just look at him, you would get the message. Please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show. Follow us as always on social media. We need you all to do this. We really do. You can find all the links below in the show description. This is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. And that, remember, talk without analysis is just chatter. And we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all next week. Until then, got Dr. Jack Rasmus coming up on Monday. Until then, I'm Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a great weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.